Hello, people. So, today I'm going to say something at the risk of sounding absolutely ridiculous, and uh, and um, um, and maybe even at the risk of being questioned in many ways, and where my thinking is, and well, sometimes you got to say something that needs to be said. Maybe sometimes it's a perspective that may not be popular. It may even be incredulous. It may even be ridiculed. But as bizarre it may seem, and as irrational, maybe there's a perspective from which the person speaks. I certainly am speaking from a perspective, and this needs to be said. And this has to do with the five elements, the five basic elements. In India, we call it in many traditions, it's called the panchabhootas. The fire, earth, air, water, space, or ether. I'd rather call it ether. Yeah, fire, water, air, space, ether, and global warming. Now, how are these two connected? Just hear me out a bit here, okay? All of universe, all of everything, all that there is said to be made up of these five essential basic elements, basic forms of matter or energy, which is interchangeable. But these are the five forms which is there, and they all exist in space. So you can call the space as the sixth. Yeah. And this is true for Earth. This is true for human being too. Now, in the changing times, in the amount of stress there is, the amount of tension there is between giving and taking, and control and subjugation, and the male and female energy disproportions, and you can see the kind of abuse there is, violence there is on the planet, and the kind of pollution and its effects on the environment. Animals are we are having endangered species, and we're talking about glaciers melting and sea level rising and different kinds of environmental changes and different kinds of health conditions. So there is imbalance, and I say the imbalance is actually it's not just pollution outside, pollution as an imbalance outside. You can see air pollution, water pollution, etc. But there's also pollution that's affecting inside in the five elements of the planet itself, of the human being, because of which there's an imbalance. There's disease, and on the planet it's showing different kinds of effects. And similarly, there is an effect, just about what you can perceive. And so, while there needs to be a balance, I say global warming is not just because of, there is air pollution happening and carbon emissions and trees getting cut down, but I say that is also happening because there's an imbalance between the five elements. And as a human population, if you take it as a collective, if one person is made up of the five elements and an entire species is made up of the five elements, and then you can see the proportion of fire, earth, water, air, ether, and how much there may be a compromise between good fire, healthy fire, and not healthy, which would, let's say in terms of fire, that would be the amount of stress there is. Distress versus use stress. Use stress is the good stress, which is necessary for new growth to happen, and distress is something which subjugates and created all kinds of stress and stress related. And what I mean by that is distress related diseases and imbalance. And when there are many people with that kind of a distressed thing that affects the planet, the planetary, say, fire, the planetary component of water, the planetary component of air, planetary component of ether, Yeah, planetary component of Earth. So you can see rampant mining and all kinds of things happening. Now, as bizarre as this may seem, or if this is making sense, I say global warming also has to do with the amount of imbalance in our own human species, imbalance between the five elements. So whosoever is listening to this, and to whatever extent you can contribute, people who do yoga are in some way working towards balancing between the five elements and with space as in the present tense, what's happening in the present. Yeah, because we all occupy the same earth, so there is a connection between the five elements and space. Yeah, as in we are occupying earth, so that has a space, or the space we occupy in time and space. One person occupies so much space, a room full of people occupies so much space. It's proportional. Yeah. And different kinds of maybe meditation practitioners, or whatever practice that you have, if you can include the awareness of the five elements in how we are practicing mindfulness and how we are practicing health and facilitation of health. And when we can work on balancing between the eustress and the distress, between the fire element and water element and air and earth, our sense of earth and our sense of ether. Ether would be the spirit. It's spirit as in, let's say, an energetic presence. Every person has a certain energetic constitution. Yeah, I have a certain energetic constitution with which my words come. Yeah, I speak with a certain enthusiasm, a certain strength of spirit. Another person speaks with each have relevant corresponding strength of spirit. So that and as a species together we have a certain species spirit, ether in that sense. Similarly, different plants have a certain ether component, a certain strength of spirit. Different animals, each animal, if you see, say, a dog or a horse or a microorganism, or different kinds of flora and fauna, each have their own strength of spirit. Yeah? And as human beings, as a human race, we need to balance between the eustress and the distress of each of the five elements. So through this video, I'm hoping to reach out those practitioners who do different kinds of mindfulness practices and different kinds of health balancing, to also include this into this thinking, this realm of thinking, into our daily practices. Because I think when we're able to bring down the amount of heat that is there, that's arising from the stress and the tension of everyday living, either by control or subjugation, or by just not dealing with different kinds of stresses, the amount of heat that is there in our body and consequent behavior in terms of anger, in terms of violence, these are all different manifestations of there being so much of imbalance in the heat element in our body. And I think that in itself is contributing to the global warming. Considering that the planet also has a balance between all of these five elements. Now, as bizarre as this may seem, I invite you to begin to start thinking along these lines. Because I also say this because there is reference, this may seem as ancient references, but there are, if you check on YouTube, you would find references to there having been the entire a civilization, very old civilization, before the oldest civilization that we know of, Indus Valley and Harappa, before then, that human beings lived on the planet, and then there was a deluge of water, and then all of humanity had to begin, even reference to the Noah's Ark, and this is before the Manusmriti comes and all of these books. So there is reference to there having been existed a human civilization, and that they had to face a deluge, a flood before, from again melting of glaciers, etc. So I think if there is case, and we are experiencing now global warming, I think that civilization may have faced a similar imbalance because of which there was glacial melting and global warming in that sense, and then they had to face that. So now we are facing, call it very bizarre far thinking, but then we are facing global warming, and we're talking about things like that. And there is different kinds of violence and stress. So even if my thinking is far-fetched, there is still benefit to it. Yeah. So I invite each of us to, well, I am thinking along it. I invite you to think along these lines. It's a beautiful planet. It's a beautiful human race. Yeah. If we can bring about a balance between give and take, and the 5 elements, and between being and doing, we can certainly have a very healthy life, a healthy planet, not only just for us, but future generations. So I invite you kind understanding, I invite you kind thinking, and mindfulness, and whatever it requires to think along these lines, because the best is yet to be. The best is in the making. We are each in the making, and if we can also include this in our thinking, in our ways of being, in the way we inquire about things, we create healthier things. We become healthier. There is a lot of wholesomeness, there's a lot of potential as human beings that we have. I invite thinking and understanding and being from here. Yeah. Thank you for your kind listening.